I'll call the meeting to order. The meeting has been properly noticed. This time I ask Karen to take roll call.
Chris Freeman,
Here.
Mark Norman,
Here.
Tanya Newsby. Here. Clint Moses,
Here.
Carl Palmer,
Here.
Amy Riddle Swanson. Here. Charlie Schneider,
Here.
Andy Skilling. Here. And David Strait.
Here, we have a quorum to conduct business. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The school district of the Menomonie area, by embracing the unique needs and using the strengths of our diverse community, is dedicated to preparing all students to become lifelong learners, caring individuals, and responsible citizens. Before we get into the meeting too much tonight, I just want to say our mic setup is going to be a little bit different than past meetings. We have two mics available, one which is I'm holding, the other one is the mic that is on the floor here. Once we get done with communications, we'll use that mic to pass between board members so that everybody can hear decent. Okay, our next item of business is agenda order approval and revision. Does anybody have anything for tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to recommendations and commendations. We do have three, and I've asked three board members to pass those out. We do not have the certificates available yet tonight, but they will be sending those out, so we apologize for that. Start with Charlie.
Kevin Leach. Kevin Leach has recently. Okay, come on, Kevin. Kevin has recently been recognized as a National Merit Semifinalist with a score on the Preliminary Scholastic Aptitude Test, or PSAT, in the top 1% of all high school seniors in the country. Kevin's character, hard work, and overall achievement are at a high level, and the SDMA is proud of his accomplishment. Well done.
Tanya?
I have a group of people. Mr. Perry Myron. I don't think I saw him. Mr. Mike Sins. You could come on up. Mrs. Leslie Schmidt. And then Mrs. Heidi Poole. Did I pronounce that right? Okay. This group of educators in the MHS Special Education Program and MHS Athletic Department are recognized for providing MHS students with extraordinary experiences this fall in conjunction with the Menomonie Mustangs football team. Inclusive opportunities were included at practices, on-field opportunities before and after the game, a visit from the team mascot, and special box seats for the October 29th playoff victory. These experiences would not have been possible without the dedication, commitment, and impressive amount of care demonstrated by these wonderful individuals. Thank you very much.
All right, girls, cross country team and coach. Both coaches. Two coaches. These are some of the members of our 5th place D1 state cross country girls varsity team. Several of them are already at basketball practice, is what I understand. Okay, so that's how they roll. The MHS girls cross country team recently placed 5th as a team at the D1 state meet after winning the Big Rivers Conference for the 4th time in a row. The WIA sectionals and several other meets along the way, coaches Craig Olson, Ashton Keene, and Greg Anderson led the team that included 11 seniors who during their 4 years won the 4 BRC titles, earned 25 separate all-conference honors, were ranked in the Division I top 20 every week, and competed at state in each of the past 2 years. Positive attitudes, hard work, and high expectations of the seniors will continue to be a cornerstone of the MHS cross-country program. And we have Anna and Allie and Brooklyn and Maddie, coach team, up here. So a round of applause for these guys.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we'll move on to highlight on youth. And we're okay. So we have Grace and Logan here tonight. I understand we're not going to play the video. Here we go.
Okay, so Knapp Elementary did put together a video, and that's available on the public website. Due to the technology constraints, we are not going to watch the video tonight. But board members, hopefully you got a chance to review that when you went through the background. And anybody else who would like to watch the video, it's available on the district website in the board docs software. So with that, Dave, we could move into student representative communication.
Okay, Grace and Logan, take it away.
For those of you that don't know, my name is Grace Hossie, and I'm student body president at Menomonie High School.
I'm Logan McCoy, I'm vice president. So other than sports announcements this week, we have a few club announcements from the high school. This week hosted its second blood drive this year in October, and they collected 22 units of blood, so they are able to save over 66 lives, despite a few hurdles along the way. Shout out to the student donors, volunteers, staff, and the school health aide, along with the custodial team that made this all possible.
10 FFA officers traveled to the National FFA Convention last week in Indianapolis, Indiana. The students got to meet other members from across the nation, listen to the national award winners and guest speakers, and attend the convention expo. The students also got to tour various ag businesses on the way to the convention. Ben Steyer, as well as the rest of the state FFA officer team, served as national delegates and were on the floor of the convention, helping to make decisions for the national FFA organization. A special thanks to the FFA alumni for helping to sponsor some of the costs for these students.
FBLA is off to a great start and their membership keeps growing. This year, the members decided to create their own t-shirts by tie-dyeing them and iron them on the national theme Success Starts Here. On October 31st, students dressed up and set out for our Trick or Can event. It was a joint effort between DECA, FBLA, and the National Honor Society. Students collected 791 pounds of non-perishable goods to donate to Stepping Stones. The community was very generous this year. FBLA is looking forward to their business presentation and tour at Ted's Pizza on November 16th. Knowing Ted's has been around for a very long time, they look forward to hearing about their business operations and seeing the behind the scenes of making their tasty pizzas. Of course, they will stay for dinner. On November 17th, World Prematurity Day, March of Dimes raises awareness of global crisis of prematurity. FBLA will be supporting this cause by reading an announcement and wearing purple, along with selling purple cupcakes, cotton candy, and holding a miracle minute at the girls' basketball games on December 10th, with all proceeds going to March of Dimes prematurity awareness.
The high school orchestra has successfully completed their first concert of the year to positive reviews. The efforts and work ethic of the students was very evident in their performance. They are now in full vigor and working towards their next performance, which will take place on January 10th in the high school auditorium. All the while, the middle school orchestra are in full work towards their first performance, which will happen next week for the Veterans Assembly, which I guess is this week, and then on December 14th in the middle school gymnasium.
The Menomonie High School Student Council offers grants to high school teachers and programs this year using the proceeds from homecoming. There's an application that you can fill out if you're a club or organization or need money for something else. And if you're interested in doing that, please fill out the grant application and talk to one of the advisors.
The advanced theater class at Menomonie High School has advanced to the state round with their one-act play titled Almost Maine.
And the final announcement is Mia Smith will be competing at the state swim meet this Saturday in Waukesha after finishing first at sections.
And that's all we have for you today. Are there any comments or questions?
Any questions from the board? Okay, thanks both of you. We appreciate your thoroughness, so thank you. Okay, at this time we'll move into community communications. I have received a few in-person ones. We did have 6 that were turned in online. If it's okay with the board, I'll read off the names of those that submitted online communications and what their basic tenet of what they were going to talk about, rather than read them verbatim. So, the first one was from Alex Hall. She requested that the board declares the winter break as the time to transition from a mask required to mask optional for grades 4K through 6. Second was from Monica Barrier. She requested that we strengthen other aspects of the COVID safety plan if extending the mask mandate is not feasible. Tom Pearson encouraged the board to follow public health recommendations and let district medical advisors be the ones to determine when masks are no longer needed. Damon Wilkinson suggests keeping the mask mandate until we return to school break on January 3rd, 2022. Lisa Quinn Lee would like to see the mask mandate end December 20th at the earliest, also supports the district's gender support plan. And finally, Josie Pillman had sent a communication about the SDMA gender policy. The comments of the people in the school district of the Menomonie area are encouraged and appreciated by the board and administrators. Education is a partnership with schools, parents, and taxpayers, all being important participants. This is a time to air concerns and express your opinion on issues. There should be no negative personal attacks against any individuals, including staff, board members, or administrators. Please indicate if you'd like the board president to direct a member of the administration to respond to your concerns. I will call you up when you come up to speak. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. I will keep time. At the beginning, I ask that you state your name and the municipality of where you're from. We've had a little bit lax on that in the past, so please make sure you state your name and where you're from. So I'll name off the first speaker. I'll take them in the order that I received them. Our first speaker tonight is Scott Parker. On deck will be Lucy Rudenberg.
Good evening. So since the COVID-19 vaccine was approved for 5 to 11-year-olds, there's been a lot of school districts that have been establishing in-school COVID-19 vaccine stations. I was just wondering how the Menomonie area school districts, what our position is on that, whether or not we were considering that. And yeah, Mr. Steyer, if you wouldn't mind addressing that question directly.
Right now, we're in communication with the health department. There's no plans for in-school vaccinations right now. Not to say that that's something that couldn't be considered in the future. But what the board has made pretty clear moving forward is that there's no intent to have a vaccine mandate at this time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. The next speaker, Lucy Rudenberg. On deck, Andrew Shu.
I'm Lucy Rudenborg. I live in Menomonie. By now, I'm sure you're all sick and tired of hearing about masks, but please be aware that no matter how sick you are of hearing about them, it's nothing compared to how sick the kids are of wearing them. Someone has to speak up for the children who are being victimized by this inhumane policy. I begin by pointing out the obvious, which is that most of you do not wear masks to board meetings, even though the meetings are open to the public and sometimes draw large crowds. I can only speculate as to your reasons. Perhaps you have already had COVID and thus are not at risk. Perhaps you've been vaccinated, but as we all now know, vaccines are no proof against contracting or spreading COVID. Perhaps you are aware that your odds of dying from COVID are minuscule, and so you have chosen not to worry about it. Perhaps you are aware that a piece of cloth on your face does not stop the spread of viruses. Perhaps you have looked at the CDC's own studies, which found no measurable benefit from masking. Whatever your reasons, you are obviously not afraid of COVID. That being the case, it is inexplicable that some of you are willing to force the kids to wear masks. As negligible as the risk of death from COVID is for each of you, it's smaller still for the children. If it's all right for you to choose not to wear a mask, then there's no earthly reason why it shouldn't be all right for our kids to do the same. This board should follow the science, stand up to the fearmongers, and get rid of pointless and dehumanizing mask mandates once and for all.
Thank you, Lucy. Andrew Shu. On deck, Sue Walden.
15 days to slow the spread. What a joke. Kind of like some of you sitting here voting to force my child to suffer in school while not doing it yourselves at this meeting. I will again want to show my appreciation to anybody that is not voting to make my kids suffer in school and all the other kids. I know you come up against great oppression, as do my child and all the other children in school. My kid comes out of school with painful breakouts on his face and complaining about headaches every single day. Yet you get to sit here and dictate how the rules are made while you don't even follow those rules. Like, are you taking instructions from our politicians who don't follow their rules either, that force us to do all this stuff against our will? You keep saying, at this time, we're not going to force vaccines. I love how that "at this time" is thrown in there. I love how you take masking policies off the agenda, thinking that it's going to keep us quiet. It's always on the agenda. You are making my child suffer along with other children. You are psychologically damaging these children. They don't know how to read faces, and they think they're going to die from air. This thing is not floating around us all the time. Clearly, you don't believe that either, that it's floating around us, because you're sitting here without a mask. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 is the majority. Somehow we keep getting a majority vote to force this on our kids. Are you kidding me? And I know for a fact that some of you have changed your votes, at least one of you, because of a lawsuit. You've already admitted it. So you're going to stand for what's right until somebody pressures you. And then you're just going to throw what's right out the window? I have stood up to managers. I have stood up to workplaces in multiple different workplaces. Guess what? I called it bluff. They'd rather have me working than to worry about this dumb rule that doesn't make any sense. My child is suffering in school along with other children. I don't even know what to say anymore. You sit here at the beginning of the meeting and claim that you're here for the benefit and well-being and teaching our children to thrive in society. How is my child learning to thrive in society when he's harassed by teachers every single day under your order and coming out of school with headaches? How is he learning when he's getting a headache? How is he learning when he's dealing with painful breakouts on his face that he shouldn't have to be dealing with until he's at least in this building or the high school? How does it make any sense to force my child to suffer, force the teachers to force this suffering on my child and other children while you get to sit here free of it? It was always on the agenda, no matter whether you type it on a piece of paper or not. We will be here every single time until you abolish this nonsense. Have you looked up the brewery that is suing you guys and every other district in this state? If you looked at the stuff on their Facebook page, they don't care about our children. They care about an agenda. Free our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Sue. On deck, Abraham Smith.
My name is Suzette.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Sue is short, but so am I, and that's why I don't like to be called. But anyways, here we go. Thank you for listening to us, and thank you for reading our emails. And thanks for the response from Joe. I have been coming here since the board has been meeting at the high school. We talk about diversity, equality, equity, and such things. Do you really believe this? You want to mandate masks for now, and who knows what is going to happen down the road if vaccines won't be next. The reason I say this is because it was mentioned 2 meetings ago that if the government would mandate it, then you would follow the mandate. That is unconstitutional. Address this issue of vaccine at another time. It's not enforced, so we'll let it go. The problem we have is masking the children 6th grade and under, when we know darn well that the children are young and are not spreading the big C. 6th graders are with 7th and 8th graders. This makes no sense to me at all. It is those that have been vaccinated and those that have not who are spreading or getting it. We know people who have been vaccinated and have come down with it, even a couple of times. So this is this fair to the children? I say not. Herd immunity is the best protection out there. We will never agree on this. It is just dividing people. Parents are getting more protective of their children than ever before. We do not live in a bubble. We will get sick and die. The unhealthier a person is, the more they will have health issues. Cancer, diabetes, obesity, which causes a poor immune system. People don't seem to worry about dying from this. Aaron Rodgers, let's bring that up. Researched. More should do this. Check out his 47-minute interview because of his reaction and why he declined a shot. He should know being an athlete and keeping healthy. The children, as we know, they play with their masks and don't wear them properly. We have teachers that are like on them, if not, and then we have those that don't make such a big deal out of it. In the meantime, our youngest children are being abused by making them wear masks. Having a child with disabilities, like the person suing, or health issues can be hard, as I also have a great-granddaughter that has disabilities and health issues. The world does not revolve around 1 or 2 children. We live in a generation that it's all about me. At one of the meetings, a lady talked about the football game, wearing a helmet. No kidding, they signed up knowing that. It wasn't pushed on them, they made a choice. We are not suing, at least as far as I know. What may happen, as it did last year and this year and maybe next year, is taking the children out of public schools, which I am all for that. We would like proof that these masks work. I have worked in a medical device company and have had to wear masks like the little flimsy blue ones that at the hospital, the doctor, to test air particles. Germs are a lot smaller than air particles. We are for freedom to choose what is best for you and your families. Just like raising our children and the neighbors' kids don't
Thank you,
like.
Suzette.
End of story.
Thank you. Abraham Smith, Brittany Weicker is on deck.
So there are 2 items on the agenda I wanted to address. I believe there are 2 sort of responses to the current mask mandate. One of them is to, forward-looking, remove the mandate as of December, I think it was 13th or 15th, I don't remember the exact date in the motion. And they want us to do it immediately. I think that, there was a sort of agreement back in early October that worked out just kind of barely. Obviously, there's a lot of tension in the room about these things. To kind of, say, okay, well, we know the vaccines are coming, and we'll give people an opportunity to get them if they want to, and have some leeway time in there. I still think that's a good plan. I think that realistically, I'm someone who was calling the hospitals around the region last Thursday, trying to figure out where we could get a spot. And just in terms of actual realistic deadlines, the language I think was when people have the availability, the opportunity to get the vaccine. So we found out last Thursday when the vaccines are approved that they were available in Mayo Red Cedar here in town that I think most people around here go to. The soonest date was, I believe, November, I think it was 17th. So they simply didn't have the supply yet, right? So although it was approved last Thursday, the supplies kind of aren't getting into Menomonie in a widespread way until sort of next week. So just looking ahead, that sort of buffer time of people getting fully vaccinated, that basically puts us, I think, at roughly like December 24th, right? So just from a practical perspective, I mean, I totally respect the original motion. I think from a practical perspective, I think stopping the mask mandate on like December 13th or 15th or 17th, we just allow 1 more week. We're at winter break. We can make a clean change for the teachers, and you can read, in January, I think the world's gonna look a lot different. We are seeing somehow, a local spike now, which is a little strange, but I personally am hopeful that as kids who want to get vaccinated And as kind of whatever wave has been coming through this fall is kind of diminishing, hopefully throughout the winter, I'm hoping personally we'll be in a better situation in January. So my recommendation, from my own perspective, is let's just stick to it for December. That's very, very close to the sort of timeline we were already talking about. Is minimal disruption to the teachers because it keeps the rules the same, doesn't change them a week before the semester ends. And then come back in January, reassess at that point, and see where we are. I think the world might look a lot different, in January from how it does now. And I agree with a lot of people in the room. I don't think that a vaccine mandate is, certainly I don't think it's necessary. I hope it's not necessary. I think people will do it willingly because they believe in, the power of vaccines to help people. And also, I don't think it's the school board's responsibility anyway. And that is a question of state and federal government and public health officials and so on. So that's, I don't think even a question that the school board would address without a mandate anyway. It's not kind of their purview. That's totally fine. So that's where I stand. Let's just kind of, hang out good in the semester, make a clean change in January as necessary. So thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Okay, Brittany. Brittany will be our final community communication for tonight.
Hey, I'm Brittany Weicker. I live in North Menomonie. Mask and vaccine mandates are not acceptable. I'd like to remind you all that you are not following the wishes of the people that elected you. In the parent surveys, 69.3% of the parents voted for optional masking, and only 8.4% voted for 4K through 6th masking. My family had COVID a year ago. My son had body aches twice a day when we had to fill out the health survey for the county. That's it. This is a virus that generally affects the elderly and not our children. I have two quick questions for the board members. How many of you have kids in the school district? How many of you have kids that follow in this mandate, 4K through 6th? Not too many? So it must be pretty easy to vote for this compromise when it doesn't affect your family. You can go home and forget about it. You know how many people in Dunn County died from COVID since the start of it, a year and 9 months ago? 47 people. As of last Friday, 47. Out of 7,247 positive cases and 45,368 residents. I did the math. That's 0.6% of confirmed cases and 0.1% of our population. How many were children? I don't know. I couldn't find that, but I bet 5 is a very high guess. Why are we punishing our children by making them wear masks over this? Masks are creating segregation. My daughter, whose teachers have called an example student, has told me that you can tell the 6th graders at school because they are the ones wearing masks. Why are we giving kids reasons to pick on each other by creating differences? Before masks were required, my son had close contact. I got an email from the school district that stated, this letter is to notify you that since 9/10 of 21, there have been 3 confirmed cases of COVID-19 associated with your child's 6th grade classroom. Close contacts have been notified. However, because of the multiple cases identified, your child may have had multiple exposures. We strongly recommend all students and staff associated with this classroom get tested. So basically, it said your kid was potentially exposed a lot. Guess what? No mask, none of us got sick. I know someone's daughter who got the shot back in February. Her daughter had her menstrual cycle 3 times in the next 2 months, hasn't had it since. Why would I force this on my daughter, who is looking forward to getting married and having a family someday? I've seen reports that shot clinics are coming to Wisconsin schools. I'm 100% against this. If parents want their kids to get the shot, they should bring them to a clinic. I've never been so afraid for my children that they'll be forced into a decision at school that is not right for them. I should be more afraid of their peers pressuring them into drugs than staff members. I ask again, why are we punishing our children for something they haven't done? This lacks complete common sense.
Thank you, Brittany. That concludes our communications for this evening. Thank you. We appreciate your feedback. At this time, we'll move on to item 9, revenue and expense reports for the month ending October.
Okay, we'll take a look at the revenue report first. We'd like to open that up. The month of October was a pretty typical month for us in 2021. We received our first equalization aid payment, which is listed there. And then we had received local revenues I completed some grant claims, so those should be coming in the month of November and December. So for our general fund 10, we received in $3,352,809.99. For our Fund 21 gift account, we received in $83,894.03. And then in special education, we've received in so far $28,492.24. Moving on to the expense report by function. Overall, we've expended 20.44% compared to 20.87%. Pretty typical. And then for Fund 27, we received in 9.17% compared to 18.06%. So slightly higher there. And then food service, Fund 50, we expended 21.86% compared to 23.20%. Really for the month of October, the only differences we've had is in like one-time bill payments and then timing of bills and payments. And then our expenditures by object, this is broken down, this is all the funds, not just the general fund, but all of them combined. We're at 20.24% expended compared to 16.29%. Again, no real surprises this month, just bill timing and then one-time purchases. You'll see salaries are slightly higher. You know, we did have higher summer school costs this year, not just in salaries, but also transportation. Under equipment and hardware, we purchased the network server, so that account has higher expenditures. Dues and fees, we moved the student activity accounts into Fund 21, and those are going into that category, so those expenditures are higher there. But if you look back to 1920, it's pretty typical to prior year, with COVID and everything. Any questions?
Any questions from the board? Thank you, Leah. Okay, move on to item J, monthly employment report is there for the board to review. Any questions? Okay, we as a board need to take about a 10-minute, maybe 15-minute break for closed session. So if you, okay, we'll do the motion first to go into closed session. Do I have a motion? Amy, second? The board will go to the library, so everybody can stay in this.
Chris Freeman.
Yes or remote?
Yeah. All right, Mark Hillman,
Yes.
Tanya Hennessy,
Yes.
Clint Moses,
Yes.
Carl Palmer,
Yes.
Amy Bradley Swanson,
Yes.
Charlie Schneider,
Yes.
Angie Skilling, David Smith.
Yes. Okay, we're in closed session, we'll be back, hopefully 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah, right. Right. Oh. And then. Which is probably, they're very provider. A bunch of air going out. Oh.
It's like listening to paint dry.
It is, isn't it? did find out. I don't know. Something we would choose.
We like that.
Okay, we'll go ahead and reconvene into open session. Our next item on the agenda, or the action, or the consent agenda, item 4A, action to approve consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve? Angie, is there a second? Charlie, go ahead. Seconded by Charlie. Tanya, question?
Yeah, can we separate the agreements for number 4?
You want number 4 pulled out
Yeah.
separately?
Yeah, please.
We can do that. We'll move that into the action agenda then, Joe. Okay, so in the consent, with the motion and second, is that okay? For the, Charlie, you seconded it? Angie made the motion, is that okay if we pull out number 4? Okay. So in the consent agenda, the minutes from our October 25th special board meeting, we have financial reports of the board approved general fund checks in the amount of $2,308,431.62. And cash receipts in the amount of $145,051.80 for the month of October 2021 as presented. Donations exceeding $1,000 for the month of October were $1,500 to the NAP Elementary from the NAP PTO, and this will be used for book giveaways. And $15,000 from the Menomonie Booster Cup to the high school athletics. It amounts to about $625 per athletic program. So we have a motion and a second. Any further questions? Seeing none, Janet, let's vote. Motion passes by unanimous vote. Okay, move on to the action agenda. Okay, it'll be at the end. And the action agenda, item 5A, approve minutes from our regular meeting, regular board meeting, October 11th, 2021. Motion to approve. Clint, is there a second? Angie, any discussion? Okay, Janet, let's vote. Motion carries by unanimous vote. Action item 5B, approve revision to the SDMA COVID-19 plan, mask optional policy. Under this agenda item, there were 2 agenda items submitted, and I guess I'll ask Angie and myself each to talk about those. Angie? Here's the
I submitted a mask optional request to go back to our original mask optional policy that we had approved back in August. Part of it was I couldn't find a lot of science on there regarding prolonged use of masks being safe and effective. And the other part of it is sticking to my position from the beginning. It should be a parent choice. We have been doing the masking here now for a while. We do have some positive COVID cases in our elementary school despite the mask wearing. I wholeheartedly feel like it is more detrimental than it is beneficial for some kids. For other parents who feel otherwise and want to choose that for their kids, then they should be able to have their kids wear a mask and it should go back to optional. I guess I don't have anything additional to add. But I would like to make a motion to
Would you mind,
do that.
Angie, if I talk about mine first?
You sure can. Here you go.
Okay, my submitted motion was that we return to mask optional on December 13th. And my reasoning for making that motion is it follows through on what the board said. It also gives us some protection on the legal side as well. And I think that I have no intention of the mask mandate going on further than that. That's how I feel. And I think it gives parents some time to get their kids vaccinated. It's not as long as many in the community would like, but I believe it's reasonable. So at this time, I would ask what the board's pleasure is. If they would like to. Yes. Apologize for the mic situation.
Teamwork.
Amy?
So, Angie, did you make a motion?
I want
You wanted to, okay, all right. Of course, on the other side of things, I'm complete opposite from Angie. I've been consistent all along about mask mandates, especially for young kids who are not able to be vaccinated. I think I would prefer that it be after winter break, that we stop that, but I'm also going to make a compromise if the board would compromise with me and do December 13th. Because we did say, in this case, we have a chance to be vaccinated. So I could handle December 13th, but again, I prefer after winter break. Thank you.
We have a motion.
Well, I'm a little confused because Angie talked about hers and now I'm talking about.
Okay, so I guess I just need one of you, I don't care whoever wants to go first, one of you to actually say I make a motion to do whatever.
Okay, well, then I'll say I'll make a motion to go to at least December 13th.
We have a motion to continue the mask mandate until December 13th. At that time, make it optional on the 13th. Is there a second for that? Chris?
It would make more sense for Angie to do the motion first, since it's, getting rid of masks now, which would make the motion. Angie is making the development. So it would make more sense. I thought that's the way the agenda was set up, that Angie would go first and make a motion. And then with that passed, and no need in having any more discussion. And then if it didn't pass, then it would make sense to then go to a less or a more prolonged approach to asking just to be suggested.
We have a motion on the floor. It's up to the board how you want to handle it. Either you second the motion or not second the motion, and then we can go to Angie's motion. However the board would wish to proceed. Is there a second for Amy's motion? I'll ask one more time. A second for Amy's motion? Carl?
If this specific motion is not seconded at this time, is it able to be brought up again if a future motion fails in this session?
I guess, there's been some criticism from all sides on how some things are handled, but one thing I will say, Robert's Rules of Order is pretty specific in that as long as the will of the board is done, regardless if it's handled perfectly according to Robert's Rules of Order, as long as the will of the board is done during the meeting, that it's okay that way. So I would say if it fails for lack of a second right now, and the board wanted to bring it up again and second it at that time, if that's what the board wanted to do, they could do that, so.
Can I say something?
Charlie?
It would be allowable to make a motion to reconsider if that motion was down, and then later make a motion to reconsider.
Point of order? Okay. I'll ask one more time. Motion, Amy's motion is to use the December 13th deadline. Is there a second? Okay. Then we'll, anything else that the board wants to do on this? Any other motions?
Make a motion
Angie?
to re-adopt the mask action policy.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the mask optional policy district-wide. And I understand the need to abide by the 6-week rule that we had voted on, which I didn't vote for that then. However, I also feel like what is going on 6 or 7 weeks from now may be very different, and we should really at that time consider what is going on at that time. Right now, I looked today, there were, unless it has been changed, there were 33 cases, which is a 1% positive case in our district. I just,
64 today.
no, I looked. I don't know if it got updated today, then, after I looked. So, I think, parents should have a choice, kids should have a choice, and it should be optional.
So we have a motion from Angie. Is there a second? Mark, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote on the motion. Angie, your motion then would read to make masks.
No. As far as this session goes. And when we talk about vaccinating our kids. I know a lot of people that don't plan to vaccinate their kids, so regardless of whether they're vaccinated or not, the mask optional policy doesn't play a role for them. Additionally, you can still get and contract COVID whether you're vaccinated or not. So basing the whole mask policy on vaccinations sort of negates the whole purpose of it to me. I strongly feel that it should be, for me, a compromise between the people that want to be masked and the people that want the option to mask, is having that option. You are still able to wear a mask with a mask optional policy. So with that said, I am choosing to support all the parents out there that voted for me, that want to have a right and a say over their child's health and well-being at school. And it's not just wearing a mask. It's being able to communicate and see other kids, being able to communicate with a teacher, being able to have interactions and things like that that you can have when someone's wearing a mask. You can see what someone is saying. It's difficult. Even when you guys come up here and you're speaking and you guys are wearing a mask. There was a gentleman last time, I did not understand a single word he said, and I wanted to stop him and say, I can't understand what you're saying. So for me, it's an issue of more than just parent option, but health and well-being, there are so many things that play into that aside from COVID, and we are just simply looking at appeasing a small group of people who think that everyone should wear a mask. And I think there's more people out there that don't believe that believe that there are other ways to mitigate. I mean, Monica said it herself, there are other ways to mitigate COVID besides just masks. So why we haven't looked at a lot of those things in addition to, having a mask optional policy, I would like to see us do that too. So with that, I make the motion. Thank you for seconding it, Mark.
Yeah, the motion has been made and seconded. We're in the discussion phase. Thank you, Angie. Any other board members? Clint?
As you can tell, as we pass the microphone around, we're really concerned about mitigation measures here too, but I find that kind of interesting. But I guess I've got a couple of questions for Dr. Joe on this. We had an outbreak last Friday at one of our elementary schools, and it is 100% masking in that elementary school. So I'm kind of curious as to how an entire classroom got quarantined and how effective our mitigation strategy was in that elementary school. I'm trying to protect privacy, obviously, and not name out a certain classroom, but it's a small district, so it's pretty easy to figure out.
Sure. Yeah, you're correct, Clint. There have been some outbreaks in school. In some cases, they have been in masked environments. I guess what I would say is that we don't know how bad it could have been without the masks. Maybe it would have been worse, maybe it would have been the same. I don't think it would have been better. But yeah, it's a heck of a thing to deal with on a daily basis, and our people are running ragged trying to do the best they can. But it's pretty clear what the recommendations are.
How many of the people that are at home on quarantine are asymptomatic?
The question from Angie was how many of the people that are at home on quarantine are asymptomatic right now?
We do not know. We don't know how many kids are asymptomatic, whether they're at home or in school. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Any other discussion from the board? Seeing none, Janet, let's vote.
Okay, so the results of the vote were 4 yes, 5 no. Voting no was Amy Riddle Swanson, Dave Steyer, Chris Freeman, Tanya Hughesby, Charlie Schneider, and Carl Palmer.
Any other discussion on this agenda item?
Can I ask then,
Carl?
our current the current approved plan was 6 weeks after vaccines became available, correct? Charlie, no? 5 weeks?
The current plan, Carl, was once our children had an opportunity to be fully vaccinated. I had thrown out the 6-week mark as a potential, but the board never took action other than to say that once children had the opportunity to be fully vaccinated.
The 6 was 5 weeks for effectiveness plus 1 week for trying to get people in for shots. That's where 6 weeks would have came from.
The actual, in the discussion, there was the number was talked about, but the actual motion itself didn't have a numerical, date tab, week number tab attached to it.
If we take no action right now, is it up to Joe to set that date based on our plan right now, which is what does fully vaccinated mean?
Yes, if the board were to leave it as is, then the superintendent would determine when that date would come to, I guess, so.
Which, it was pretty ambiguous, the motion. That was a mistake we made on this when we discussed it, because I was under the understanding that as soon as the vaccine became available, masks would be optional. And then we got the letter, the email from Dr. Joe the next day, and it specified 6 weeks after the availability, which I understand the rationale, but as the board, I think we slipped up on that one. And point out once again, Dr. Joe would have the authority to either mask or unmask at his discretion based on the pandemic powers we gave him last school year, I believe.
The one thing I will say, Clint, is that we are a board of 9, and so we all share the responsibility of how the motion was made and how it was approved. Dr. Joe?
Yeah, and the motion, it was very clear actually, and what people might have understood out of that, because again, these have been long, drawn out conversations with a lot to consider, a lot to think about. But looking back at the recording of the meeting, it was very clear that the motion was to approve going back to mask optional after our kids had an opportunity to be fully vaccinated. Now, some people might not have understood what fully vaccinated meant, or they might not have thought that at that time, but that's what the board voted on. But to answer Carl's question, with the second thing about the pandemic powers, the board at the beginning of the pandemic did provide me with the authority to make decisions related to school policy that typically the board would make in an emergency manner. However, I've been very judicious in using those powers, and in no way would I intend to use those powers against the will of the board. And any time those powers have been implemented, the board has been notified, and essentially the board has been given the opportunity, if any board member had an objection, to call a special meeting and have the board make the determination. But to be very upfront, because of some of the delays with the vaccine being available in Menomonie, I would say that without any board action, it's looking like the date when a majority of our students would have the opportunity to be fully vaccinated would be December 20th. I think December 13th could also work in terms of what the board approved, because some students have had an opportunity to get vaccinated, so I think that's a reasonable date. But to follow what the board said, it would be in that range.
Any other discussion on this agenda? I'll get you the mic, Angie, just a second.
Can someone then please explain to me then, after everyone is vaccinated and we have an outbreak of COVID, then what? Then what are the masks protecting or not protecting, or then is it everyone's choice then? or then what? I'm frustrated because you just keep moving the peg forward and forward and forward. And I mean, last April, we said no masks this next school year, and then now we voted to masks, and then now we're saying 6 weeks, and now we're saying, well, maybe 8 to 10 weeks, and now, I mean, when do we stop moving the peg, and what is the criteria with which you feel comfortable stopping moving the peg? Yeah.
Well, first of all, I don't appreciate the connotation that we've been moving the peg in some sort of negative way. We've been doing our best to try to deal with the changing circumstances of this pandemic. The circumstances have changed and they continue to change. And we're going to continue to recommend what we think is most appropriate based on the circumstances we're dealing with. This isn't a political game to me. This is trying to do a job. And I agree, last summer in June, when community case levels were probably 100th of what they are today, we were all hopeful. We were celebrating that this year was going to be normal. I can tell you that if you were going to any of our schools or talk to our parents today, it is not normal. We are in another spike. But there's no peg moving based on what the board approved at the end of September. We are talking about implementing the decision the board made. And if the board wants to make a different decision, we'll implement that.
If there's no further motions on this, we're gonna move on. No further motions?
I would prefer that the board set the date. So if you would like to, now is a great time. If you want me to do it, I will do it because I work for you. But I would encourage any of you, if you have a date, to make the motion.
We do have one more meeting prior to the deadline that is currently set, correct? Sorry. Before the date that mass would be removed, correct? We have a meeting set for November 22nd, if I remember correctly. Secondly, the comment about the peg moving, the minutes for September 27th meeting plainly read, the plan that will require the use of masks for all students in grade K through 6 until students in those grade levels have had the opportunity to become fully vaccinated. So nobody's moving anything. We have no control over when the vaccine was approved. We have no control over what the supply line will be coming in to this area. So no one is, I'm speaking. No one has any, we have no control over that. So I don't want the kids to wear masks. I want the masks to come off at the first possible moment. But I think it's prudent for us to keep them on until those kids have the opportunity to be vaccinated. That's how I voted then, and I still believe that. It's not that far away, and we're not moving it. And so to say that we're moving the peg, as you put it, is just not true.
Amy?
Well, I tried to make a motion, but we seconded it, so I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah, I'll move that we go mask optional on December 13th, as Dave's proposal stated.
We have a motion, is there a second?
I just seconded.
Amy second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second.
Tanya asked if it's left up to me when I would do it, my anticipation right now, Tanya, would be the 20th. But again, it depends on the supply chain, it depends on vaccinations. I've actually gone on the Walgreens website, CVS website, about 3 or 4 times since it got announced, and I put my birth date in, but instead of being 45, I was 7, and I tried to see when I could get an appointment. And if I go to Eau Claire, to Walgreens in Eau Claire, I could get an appointment today for November 17th. So when I look at that math, I'm thinking, the 20th. I do know there's some people that have been able to get their kids vaccinated already. I think Eau Claire has been quicker than Menomonie. But I also know that there's some people that taking off of work or trying to get their kids to Eau Claire is just not feasible for them.
What about parents who are choosing to not vaccinate their kids? Can they sign a waiver to take the mask off since they're waiving the vaccine anyway? They're not planning, there's.
No, there's no waiver process, and I think you're missing the point of the masking mandate.
One thing that, and I know a lot of people say different things different ways, but I was against the original motion to go to masking. I was in favor of mask optional for the summer school, pushed that through. And only votes that I've made against it has been since this legal issue came up. And you can criticize me all you want, certain individuals have, for making that decision, but I'm not gonna put the district liability at issue because of a decision that I made. And so when our legal says this is what you should do, I'm gonna listen to them because that's, from a legal standpoint, the way I feel. The mask optional, December 13th is, if you do the math about the earliest you can do it, based on what the board, at the time, did not include me, the 5 members that voted for it at the time, of which I was not one. 5 weeks out from that date gets it to December 13th. And it's earlier than Dr. Zadowski would like it, but I think it's a fair compromise. It follows through with what the board said it would do. I do believe there's something to be said for the board, instead of going back and forth on this issue as we have been. When we say we're gonna do something, we follow through and do it, and then leave it at that. So for this reasons, I'm gonna support the motion.
From the district standpoint, I would say also that even though if it's left up to me, I would make it the 20th. I think the 13th is reasonable. There are a number of students who will be fully vaccinated at that point, and there'll be a number of students that will have already received 1 shot. Actually, they would have already received 2 shots, but they just would not have gone through the 2 weeks after that second shot. But based on what much of the literature says, they would have a reasonable amount of protection at that point.
So I have a question. If I am missing the purpose of masking, explain it to me then, because it's gotta be more than being vaccinated or not, because vaccinated people are still getting COVID. There were almost 8,000 breakthrough cases in Minnesota just this week. So explain that to me.
We don't have our medical experts here tonight, but I can tell you what I've read. And yes, there have been breakthrough cases. There have been a much higher percentage of cases in the unvaccinated. But what we have been told all along about the masks is that they do stop the particles, the spit particles essentially, from flying, which does help minimize the amount of transmission.
Any other discussion on this motion? Chris?
I think I'm good. I can project. Well, I know it seems slightly ambiguous to leave it up to Joe, but we don't know what's happening in supply chain between now and then. And Nancy has mentioned that there's problems predicting what's going to happen, setting a date before we know what's happening. So I would prefer to keep it the way it is and allow Joe the flexibility to adapt to circumstances as they present themselves. And if we need to step in and to create a date that's sooner than the 20th, because we feel we've got the ability for our students who would like the choice to be vaccinated before they enter into the unmasked school environment, then we can do that. I think we have 2 meetings before the 13th deadline, so it gives us plenty of opportunity to adjust if we need to. But I think as we got reports from community members tonight, it's unclear as when the first opportunity is for most of our students to start their vaccination status. We'll know more by the time we get to the end date. So I would leave it as it is. And as the mandate was ambiguous, was intentionally so we can adapt. So we can make the best decisions possible. They think you're going to get safe.
Any other discussion? I will say from my standpoint, Chris, I'm not willing to let this drag on any longer than absolutely necessary. So for me, it's December 13th. Any other discussion? Carl?
Yeah, my main reason for continuing to support this period until there is full vaccination is, I was trying to think of an analogy today, and what came to my mind was that I can plant seeds in the garden, but I can't get out of the garden until those have grown. And so getting those shots in the kids, we need to give them that minimum amount of time to those motivated parents that do want that option. Not everyone has to do it, but if they want to get to Eau Claire, set that minimum, which is what we're talking about. In no way would I expect that whatever we vote on tonight can't be, as a board, adjusted in 6 weeks or 12 weeks. If there's 4,000 new cases in Menomonie, if there's a new variant, we as a board are here to adapt and make decisions with the best information we have at the time. So regardless of whether this votes right now or not, we always as a board have the right to come back together and make the best decision for the district.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, we'll go ahead and vote. So the motion is to make masks optional available starting December 13th in the district. Carl made the motion, Amy seconded.
The motion passes 5-4. Voting against the motion, Chris Freeman, Clint Moses, Mark Hillman, and Angie Skillings.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 5C, approve SDMA solar project. Dr. Zanowski.
The board already talked about this in pretty good detail at the last school board meeting. I appreciate the work of Justin Shinneman, our energy manager. Justin has put the numbers together. He's worked with Kevin Tomaszewski, our director of building and grounds. It is recommended that the board approve the middle school solar project, which will include 100 kilowatt solar voltaic system here at Menomonie Middle School.
Is there a motion to approve? Mark, is there a second? Chris? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this? We did talk about this in our last meeting. Any other points of interest?
Just have one question. It says that you'll be doing a study as to whether to put it on the roof or put it on the berm out on the north side of the building. When that study is completed, will this come back to us, or are we approving this no matter which way you decide to go there?
The way that this motion is proposed is that it would provide us the authority to make that decision based on the recommendation of the building grounds manager, energy manager. Ultimately, I would sign off on it.
Any other questions? Seeing none, let's vote. Motion passes by unanimous vote of 9-0. Okay, moving on to action item 5D, approve after-school academic support plan at the Menomonie Middle School. Is there a motion to approve? Chris, is there a second? Charlie? Joe?
So the board has received the proposal. I appreciate the work of our Director of Academic Supports, John and Sam, working with our building principals and putting this plan together. It would be a pilot program here at the middle school. The board has all this, but essentially the program would operate and allow students to come in and get help from SDMA teachers and staff 3 hours per week. We're hoping to have 45 students to begin and potentially grow the program from there. John can answer additional questions if you have any. Otherwise, the recommendation is for the board to approve this pilot program.
As you said, Joe, this is a pilot program. We'll try for this next year, see how it works. Hopefully it's successful. Any questions or discussion from the board?
Couple of questions. It says that essentially the kids will need to sign up and then be a part of the program throughout the process, not drop in here or there. Is there any thought on having it available so that a kid could drop in if they're having an issue with a specific subject or a piece of a specific subject?
Yeah, we would have a waiting list considered if we have openings there, as well as we're gonna have a Google Classroom access, so students who could not physically be there could log in and access a teacher at that point. So there would be access for a student to get questions answered.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Chris?
And this is just a concern. I know my kids need to eat about a box of cereal when they come home from school, and I'm really concerned that the kids are gonna have a snack, so they're able to keep their brains motivated, a little injection of some sort of ability to make themselves, feel like they're in a space where they can really be successful. So I know there's a lot of grants out there, community grants. Leo's got one, and Almeo's got one. Thinking about ways that we can lead really driving home that a lot of kids are making decisions really not sure what it is. Yeah, absolutely. We're already working with food nutrition this year. We already have within house to do that and offer a snack after school. Now we're going to do
Okay, any other questions from the board? Seeing none, let's vote. Motion passes by unanimous vote of 9-0. Item E, cooperative agreement between SDMA and School District of Chippewa Falls. The agreement is 66.0301. Is there a motion to approve? Carl, is there a second? Angie? We have a motion and a second? Dr. Zdowski.
You have to refresh your screen.
Okay, are there questions? I know the board got the background on this, but I think the background has now disappeared, so hopefully you reviewed it.
You refresh your screen.
Are there any questions? Tonya is here if you have any questions. Otherwise, just to remind everyone, we just had one of these last month, I think the month before, when we have specialized services that are needed. Sometimes it is better for the school district to contract with other schools, especially for specialized services when they might be services where we would not need a full-time person to provide those services. If another school district might have a full-time person, oftentimes that person has room in their schedule. And this is the sharing that school districts do is quite common. Any questions?
Just really brief, how, do we ever look at two different districts for the same service, or is it more of a capacity issue, like we shop around?
In this case, these are our employees, and then, so we, Chippewa Falls takes part of their time, because they need some time, we need some time, but we don't need a full-time person.
So the question was, do we ever share between districts? Tonya said that in this case, we provide the personnel, but it's not a full-time position if it was just Menomonie. So we share time with Chippewa Falls to utilize that individual into a full-time position. Any further questions or discussion? Okay, let's vote. The vote is 8-4-0 and 1 abstention. The motion carries. Moving on to discussion items, policy review. Our first item 6A, 2022-23 school district calendar. Dr. Zalowski.
So board members, this calendar was based off of a similar calendar that we've used the last few years. A couple things to point out. School would start on September 1st. That's the earliest day that we're allowed to start per state law. School for students would wrap up on June 2nd. An interesting note, the last couple of years, the calendar has been modified to make the day before Thanksgiving a day off for students and staff. And this year we had an extra professional development day in August. And we received a lot of positive feedback about that. It provided our staff members more time to prepare for the start of school, which really helped with all the COVID situation. But we also found value in being able to start school by having the staff members get together, review their class lists, discuss student data, and kind of identify some of the needs to start the school year hitting the ground running. So that is a change from a few years ago where November 23rd had been a PD day, a professional development day for a number of years. Other than that, the principals, I appreciate their input in terms of parent-teacher conferences, and this will be brought back for your approval at the next meeting. But do board members have any direction or questions that they would like to provide tonight?
Any questions? The one thing I see is new teacher orientation starts on August 16th, 17th, and 18th, and then the following week, August 23rd, 4th, and 5th, we have professional development, along with August 30th and 31st, with schools starting on September 1st. Any questions from the board? Okay, we'll bring this back. You're gonna run this by staff as well, John? Okay, so. Okay, our next item on the agenda, annual free and reduced meals eligibility report.
So this really is just informational for the board. I appreciate Leah Theater, our Director of Business Services, for putting this together, and also people in the Pupil Services Department for their assistance. You can see that the percentage of children qualifying for free and reduced meals continues to increase, unfortunately. Last year, the number was 42.5%, and this year it's 43.51%. If you look back, years further back, we were in the low 30s back in 2017. So definitely some challenges, and I think our school nutrition people have done a really good job stepping up and meeting those challenges. And I think the board supporting the universal breakfast programs and the ability to provide free meals with the pandemic has been very helpful. So unless there's any questions, this is just informational.
Any questions? Okay, we'll move on. Item C, discuss purchase of land parcel adjoining the SDMA environmental site. Dr. Smith.
I appreciate the work that Brian Seguin, our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction. He also has been very active in helping us manage the environmental site. He was approached by the landowner adjacent to the property, and one of our entrances coming into the site, there had been a handshake agreement many years ago and several superintendents ago that allowed for the road going into that site to cross land. There has been a change in the landowner status, and we have the opportunity to purchase a very small parcel of land to make that permanent. And there's a process the board would need to be followed, or would need to follow. We will talk a little bit about that in closed session coming up here, but just to inform the board and the community that that's what the district is looking at. Any questions?
Looks pretty quiet. No questions? Yep. Item D, set date for mid-year budget hearing. Every year in January, we hold a budget hearing prior to our first meeting in January.
Yeah, we started that about 5 years ago, and I think it's been well received. Our assumption is the board would like to continue with that mid-year budget hearing prior to the January 10th school board meeting. Consensus is correct, or yes? No objections, there you go. All right, perfect. Leah, get ready.
Okay, and then item E, review items related to next meeting dates, board committees and reports. We do have a meeting coming up on November 22nd. Anticipating to move that meeting back to the ASC office if there's nothing controversial on the agenda. Hopefully we can, but that's the game plan right now anyway. Also coming up, we have a meeting on December 13th. There's no meeting at the end of December. And then our first meeting in January is the 10th, as we just mentioned. Also, there's a lot of talk about school board positions and things like that. There's 3 members that are going to be up for election here in April. And so for anybody that's interested in running for school board, don't be afraid to throw your hat in the ring and get involved. So. Okay, with that, we'll take a 5 to 10 minute. Okay, I guess, yeah, we'll take a motion to go in closed, and then the board will move to the library again. So is there a motion to go into closed? Clint, is there a second? Charlie? Jan, could you please take roll?
Chris Freeman,
Yes.
Mark Gilman,
Yes.
Tanya Busby. Yes. Clint Moses.
Yes.
Carl Palmer,
Yes.
Amy Riddle Swanson,
Yes.
Charlie Schneider,
Yes.
Angie Skillings. Yes. And Dave Steiger.
Yes. We are in closed session. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Thank you.